Very good evening, everyone. Hope you're healthy and safe as well, and your team members are also family are also doing well. And thank you for joining for the workshop. I hope it's going to be a very interactive session as well because we have been brainstorming on predominantly how we can also make startups operationally efficient during this pandemic as well. That's the objective where the workshop has been scheduled. So THub in collaboration with Google for Startups, we are planning to, start series of workshops as well as one of this initiative. This is the maiden initiative where this workshop gives you insights on tools that will help you monitor, control, and optimize the cost as well. And also you'll get intelligent recommendations in the Google Cloud platform as well. So I'm pretty sure for a startup, cloud is certainly an investment as well. But in order to leverage maximum ROI on this investment, you need to manage it well as well. So this is where the workshop is going to literally help you as well. You will learn how how to design and optimize your cloud spend with some best practices. It's going to be shared by Damish. Before that, I'll take this opportunity to, quickly introduce Dharmesh as well. He's a technologist known for his ability of developing enterprise applications on cloud platforms. I would say not only restricted to Google Cloud, but I'm pretty sure Dharmesh also has a wide range of experiences with dealing with other cloud platforms as well. And he has diverse experience in banking, e-commerce, media, entertainment, to name a few as well. And currently, he is spearheading Agraya Technologies. He is the director of technology, and also he is very proactive when it comes to Google Developer Expert for GCP as well. And very heartening to see he also manages the Google developer community in Mumbai as well. So I think he's very notable when it comes to the various conferences and mentoring young professional startups in cloud technologies as well. So post the meeting, we're also happy to schedule one-on-one office hours as well with some of the select startups, because I'm pretty sure this is going to be a precursor, right? From there, we'll also take it forward as well. Apart from that, Damesh loves traveling, backpacking as well. He loves trekking, exploring unexplored destinations as well in the pre-COVID world. So recently, he was also recognized as India's first GD in payments category as well. So it is a honor to have you, Dharmesh. Over to you.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Yogi, for inviting me, and it's a maiden event that you are starting forward, and I would really appreciate this initiative, and I can really resonate that from my experience into the startup world, that a lot of folks who are kind of building upon, or they have that right tech skills, they have the right domain skills, but sometimes the cloud aspects are not taken care of in the right manner, and that is where I'm doing my bit to kind of help the communities be at pace, and take them to a substantial level. So yeah, thanks again, Yogi, and with that, welcome again to all the participants. Let's have this session on cost optimization on GCP and its related best practices. Now, I mentioned earlier that don't restrict yourself to any questions you might have only to the scope of this session. But yeah, if you have or want to ask anything in specific to your business case or to your use case, feel free to post it in the comments. I mean, the chat section. I would try to answer them to the best of my knowledge wherever applicable. So yeah, Yogi already introduced me. I'm Dharmesh, a Google developer expert for cloud and payment systems. And let's get started with today's talk. All right. So, okay, sorry. All right. So roughly in the next 40 minutes to an hour, we are going to cover these four basic areas, okay, of what are the fundamentals of understanding, or how do you actually start into a level of cost optimization. You don't need to be a financial analyst, you don't need to be a CA, nothing of that sort. It's not that complex or that fancy, but yes, it's just some basic alerting, basic optimizations that you just need to have a very sharp eye on that, and that you would obviously learn as you kind of progress in the journey. And I would share some tips and insights from certain components of the infrastructure that you can kind of think of into this session itself. So the first aspect is definitely going to be knowing your cost. You need to understand how the costs are generated, what are the actual costs, what are the tools available for your disposal when it comes to your cloud consoles, be it GCP, AWS, Azure, anywhere. Every platform has those capabilities, has those provisions to give you those visualizations, give you those insights. And that is where the first section we just touch upon a very high level basic. Then we understand how do you actually define or how do you actually find out your total cost of ownership. Now, for cloud, this is a very important term when it comes to your TCO, because it's not just going to be your cloud cost. It is also going to be, I mean, cloud definitely would encompass these factors as well. So people always like kind of worry about, oh, my compute engine is like kind of very overbuild. But did you check the networking aspects? Did you check the analytics aspects? Did you check whether your storage is optimally managed and optimally utilized? But yes, these are some factors that you should kind of uh, carry upon when you are doing this kind of an analysis and understanding your overall TCO for your cloud architecture or your cloud landscape. We would definitely see some of the optimizations that can bring down your cloud cost. So when I say optimizations, I do not mean just cutting down on cost. Okay, optimizations would actually mean where you can spend better. It does not matter if you have to shell a few $100 extra, but is that giving you a better operational efficiency? And those are some of the optimizations that we would see. In terms of like next steps, I would rather leave the floor open and give you some insights, or rather hear from you on what are those services, or I'll share some services that actually would help you achieve a better operational efficiency. But yeah, I would also want to utilize that time to hear from you, or if you want to ask any questions, we can discuss and touch upon those areas as well. Now, to start with, now any cloud sales or cloud migration that actually happens, it happens on the basis of the premise of cost savings. You come to the cloud from on-prem to cloud, or from X cloud to Y cloud, you are going to save this cost, that cost, and so on. But it's just the lack of optimizations that would lead to a higher incurring of your cost. And that is where we are going to have this session to kind of solve some of these areas and some of these myths. So yes, cloud do help you in a long run of cost savings, but if you utilize that in the right manner, if you kind of hit the pedal in the right way, you are definitely going to optimize your spend on cloud and use it more efficiently. I'll give you a very simple and a very native example. You have a vehicle. You don't max it out to the speed that the speedometer provides. It will be somewhere, there is an econo range, right, on any vehicle. So you kind of max it out to say 80, 100 kmph or something of that sort. And that is a very economized range that you should run the vehicle on for the betterment of the engine, for the maximum fuel efficiency, and so on. Same way, the cloud also needs to be operated, the infrastructures also need to be operated in an optimized manner. Don't overhog it, don't underhog it, and you would actually see some benefits out of it then. So this is a quote which I really like, and it applies to actually all walks of IT, non-IT, anywhere. So it really talks about the quality aspect, which often gets neglected when people talk around cost saving and any kind of optimizations that they do. It's always a trade-off, but that should not happen. Cost is actually more important than quality, but then your quality is actually the best way to reduce your costs. If you design an application with, the best practices, the best of standards, you are not only increasing the quality of your application or your service, but you are also reducing certain costs. So when I say cost over here, it does not just mean your cloud infrastructure cost. It also means your operational cost, your people cost, your skilling cost, and a lot of other costs that go into running a business or running a startup. And I'm sure you all would definitely relate to that as well. So with that, let's move into the first section for the evening, which is knowing your cost. So the first and foremost thing that you need to do is kind of very at the very basis of your cloud console, there are a lot of tools available at your disposal. Talking specifically of GCP, you would certainly see usage and trends as two distinct elements that you would figure out when it comes to understanding your cost patterns and your dashboards around the billing matrices. So one dashboard provides you a usage based on projects, SKUs, products. We'll come to some details around it. Another one will, the same dashboard will actually provide you the trends based on time, location, and also credits. So when I say credit, it does not just mean your free credits, but it also means your sustained usage discounts, how you are better using it, and so on. So these two trends or these two insights that you actually gather from your console is something that will help you plan your cost and optimize it based on the insights that you are getting. Now, let us quickly see what does this console look like. So if you go into your billing consoles, specifically talking around GCP, now you would see something like your current cost and your forecasted cost. So, and with a fancy graph which says that how much of a cost was incurred on which day. So it's like a time series graph for your your cost that has been incurred on your infrastructure. So the first section that is highlighted will show you the current cost, which can include some credits or sustained usage discounts, and you would also see some percentages that how much of it has increased, and based on that they also would give you a forecasted total for maybe the pending time of the month, or it can be for an upcoming cycle as well. Likewise, I spoke about the forecasted total cost, which can happen over a period of time or the upcoming cycle. That way you can kind of plan your cost or kind of manage your budgets in that manner. Now, one important aspect to kind of do any kind of analysis or any kind of cost analysis is the fact that understand and read your graphs. I would say a lot of folks, what they would do is like when they want to cut down on cost, what they do is they would sort by this cost. So this is like a dev, prod, storage, or a sandbox environment. They would sort by the cost. Okay. They go by, okay, this instance is like, or this project is kind of the one which is kind of a cost hog for me, and let me kind of cut down some instances on that. But I would say don't sort, instead read the spikes on this graph. So here as an example, if you see there is a spike which has happened say on June 5th. Okay, now from the projects you might not come to know which and why the spike has occurred. For that, let's go into the next part, which is understand or filter based on the products. So if you see, sorry, give me 1 second. So I was talking about the graph wherein you are seeing your products and your spikes over here. Now, what you need to do out here is that understand the product that is causing a spike. Now, if you hover over the graph, you would see that it's not the compute engine that is causing a spike. Your overall cost may be like the highest for compute, but the spike has been caused by a product called Bigquery. It can be any XYZ product. So understand where this spike has occurred from. Now, understand the difference between a product and an SKU. Product can be at a higher level of abstraction. It can be compute engine at an overall level, BigQuery at an overall level. But the SKU, which means the billable unit, is something that you should be analyzing further from a code perspective or from a cost perspective. The SKU is something that you should be drilling down further. So in the next slide, we'll see what exactly is then SKU information giving me. So you see here that the spike is actually caused by BigQuery, and it is the one which is actually hogging too much of my cost. Now, if you see from an SKU perspective, okay, product was like BigQuery, as I mentioned earlier, but what is the service underlying behind that, okay, which is actually causing that spike? So it is the analysis service by BigQuery, and it is causing a spike. Now, maybe why it is causing a spike, maybe you are observing this as a usage, okay, which shows that it is kind of querying a very huge data set, maybe like of 13.5 terabytes or terabytes, and that is the one which is actually causing the damage in terms of your billing cycle. Now, how do you kind of then mitigate this? So there is this SKU ID. You understand that how many instances, or sorry, not instances, but services you have in BigQuery that are running. There can be jobs. There can be several different background services that you have deployed to kind of generate some dashboards, reports, and so on. So that actually is the drill down point, okay, for you to kind of identify the root cause of your higher cost. So if you see again, uh, my compute instance is not actually the one that is hogging. It is the analysis service from BigQuery, which is kind of giving me a higher cost month on month. And we'll see some of the optimization specifically to BigQuery and analytics service, which can help you avoid these kind of random spikes or interruptions, and it will also like kind of save some cost and do an optimization layer. Now, as I was mentioning, the important part over here in this section, what I'm trying to highlight is the fact that you should be analyzing your billing reports in a manner that you drill down to services rather than projects or products. Don't just kill down any project just because it is giving a high cost. It might not be really the case. It can be possible that a particular service is overshooting some misconfigured code that you have written, and that is where the cost is being higher. So with that, let's move into the next section wherein we identify and understand what does the total cost of ownership look like when it comes to cloud, and the fundamental behind this. And I would say this is especially important as a startup. Enterprises, okay, they do not worry too much about the cost, even if a few $100s here and there, they would not really bother too much about that. But as startups, and I would say as Indian startups, we should actually be worrying too much about the cost and how it is actually being spent. Perhaps like as Indians, we have this habit of saving and conserving cost, and that is where we should apply our traditions also. So what we can fundamentally do is pay what you need, is one of the mantras that you can think of when you kind of analyze your bills and analyze your cost layers. So that is one traditional way of optimizing your cost. Now, what exactly do I mean by this? So let's say let's take the example of compute as a service. So it has all the capacity that you can. One of the major areas that I have observed, not just at my organization, but at a lot of other areas, I mean, in startups as well as in enterprises, is that there are a lot of idle VMs that are lying around. They keep on running, no one is consuming, and you are every day or every month on month, you are generating a bill for that. And trust me, at a minimum, if you just go ahead and see your bills, you would definitely see at least a saving of say $50 to $100 per month, and that is definitely a significant number if you count it on a year-on-year basis or even a 3-year projection of your total cost of ownership. That comes up to say almost like $10,000-12,000, which is a significant number when it comes to operations of a startup. So one is identify your idle VMs and as well as the corresponding disk. Now, why I mentioned disk separately is the fact that your disk do cost along with your VM, even if they are not utilized. And trust me, they are one of the costliest products on any cloud platform, I would say. VMs might not cost you that much, but yeah, if you want a 5 terabyte, 10 terabyte disk, it is going to cost you a bombshell for sure. Second is understand your product and your deployment life cycles from a perspective that you can automate a lot of your schedules. Now, when I say automate, I don't mean just automate your CI/CD processes around DevOps and so on, but also automate the deployment aspects of it. So, although I do mention down the line that you can use auto scaling, but yeah, there can be schedules where your VMs are totally not utilized for say few parts of the month or few days of the month or few hours of the day wherein you do not see any sort of activity and you have observed that as a pattern. Say for example, your business is like kind of shut on Saturdays and Sundays. Why do you want to keep your VMs on? Shut them down, have a scheduler and let them handle it. So that is one way to kind of save a lot of cost. So again, always think of this kind of a cost saving from the usage perspective. So you are paying only what you need, and that is where I'm kind of emphasizing on. Another aspect is, people often kind of go ahead and over provision a lot of their resources. They might be needing a G1 small or a N1 small, but since they have ample credits, maybe provided by THub, I don't know. But yeah, say they get ample credits and they are not actually burning cash from their pockets, and that is where they kind of over provision just for an anticipation that okay, let's have some more stability. But that's not the right approach. Get your applications audited thoroughly. It might not really be actually using that much of the compute power or the storage capacity that you have actually given it, and you need to actually provision it at the right way. You can have a buffer of 10-15%, that is totally fine, but over provisioning it like 4x 10x and so on is really going to burn a hole definitely in your bill when it comes the next month. And a lot of people I have actually recommended and also scale down their models in a manner that even if their current user base is say for example 10,000 users concurrently and they have provisioned an X kind of compute, they have been provisioning it for say for example 10 million or 20 million users. Well, I understand that as a startup, you are like kind of quite optimistic in your product roadmap and your product cycles and how your users tractions are going to be there. But I would say provision it practically from 10x, from 10,000 users. You might not really jump to 10 million or 20 million users. You might go to 1 million, 2 million, and so on. So it's okay to provision that much maybe, but not to for like 10x users or like something of that sort. So over provisioning is a problem across the industry, and that is something where you can save a lot of your costs again. And when I say like these factors, like whether it is identifying your idle VMs, your automated schedules, over provisioning, even auto scaling, as I mentioned. So these together form your total cost of ownership. So it's not just these VMs that I'm trying to save cost on. The VM would have networking interfaces, they would have additional database services, they would have disk and storage capacity that is also going to be scaled down. And that is where I'm looking at a holistic picture, a holistic way in terms of saving cost across your cloud infrastructure. Now, this diagram that you're seeing, like an architecture, it's a very simple way to kind of have schedulers to start and stop instances. A very simple way. Have a cloud scheduler, it's readily available. Pops up to kind of read and understand when does the scheduler get triggered, and based on that, have a cloud function which is going to work on a trigger and then deploy the VMs, or kind of start and stop the VM. And same way you can do it for production, dev, and your test environments. Your dev environments are one of the major cost consumers, and the fact and the fact for that is often your developers work from, say, a particular time zone, or in a particular timeline. So in that case, the dev environment is actually the best case to have such kind of schedulers. You might not want to run them on prod just for the sake of having a source of reliability or a stability in your systems. But dev, staging, QA, that life cycle and that timeline, that schedule is controlled by you. You can actually control when you want to stop or start a VM. And that is where these automated schedules would definitely come handy and helpful. Uh, Another few services I would rather talk about is preemptable VMs. There can be a lot of batch processes, or something of bursts of capacity that you need. Go for preemptable VMs. It's a whole topic in itself and how you kind of utilize that. But for now, you can just understand that it's a short burst of capacity that you are getting only when you need. Again, going back to my traditional, model and mantra of pay what you need for. So that is where preemptable is kind of serving the basis for. And I would recommend and I would advocate that if a particular service you are not very certain on how what's going to be the usage, or you want to try and experiment with it, go serverless. There are a lot of services available, and especially in case of compute, there is something now called as like cloud run, or if you're talking of AWS, there is something called as Fargate. You can kind of try all these options, and trust me that as compared to a VM, these cost you almost like 5 to 10% of the cost. A running cloud run instance is only going to cost you, say, $3 to $5, whereas a continuously running VM instance for that particular workload might cost you like almost $25 to $30. So just imagine the kind of cost efficiency that you would get. And since it is serverless, you don't have to worry about scalability aspects. They automatically scale up and scale down. They're pretty much elastic in nature. So in that sense, I would say audit your infrastructure, maybe have a practice in a regular way to kind of understand what's lying underneath your infrastructure, which is not utilized, which is scrap, which is only for testing or POCs, and maybe shut them down, or make them switch on only when you need that. Automate all your schedules based on your production and dev life cycles. That is some way to kind of save a lot of cost. uh, One practice that you can start, maybe one Friday every month, you can have this kind of an auditing meeting across your infrastructure. And then maybe you can call the stakeholders for that and ask them if you really don't need that, you can kind of start cutting them down. And in I would say in a matter of 1 or 2 months, you would see the efficiency in your cost as well. So yeah, and then we kind of move ahead into storage. I did mention about the storage costs when I was talking about the compute aspects. So disk cost and other storage costs, they definitely have a lot of impact when it comes to your costs and your bills. Now, how do you actually manage this? So what are the optimizations or practices that you can follow when it comes to these storage costs as well? So one thing is choosing the right product for the right need. So again, if I have to re-emphasize my sentence around pay what you need for, it's again on the same principle. The storage classes, whether they are nearline, cold line, or the standard ones, okay, you identify the use case for that, understand where exactly you are going to utilize such storage classes. So whether it is like infrequently accessed content, then you can use something like nearline. If you don't want to like use that, or it's more like a rare disaster recovery kind of a scenario, you should not be storing it into a VM disk. There is something called as a cold line storage. You should use that in that case. So such optimizations on choosing the right product will also help you achieve a cost efficiency. There are life cycle policies on how and when your objects or your storage objects are kind of utilized, how much time you want the storage to be available for. If it is less than 1 month, if it is daily basis, if it is like less than a year, same way these life cycle policies will help you kind of define the right processes within your organization as well. So, and there have been like various instances wherein people might just be aware of this, maybe from a knowledge perspective and from a maybe from a certification perspective, but they have not been implementing it at the right level, and that is where they see a shoot in their billings and the cost patterns as well. Likewise, there are a lot of factors, especially when it comes to storage. There can be various objects or various attributes that you have duplicated. And in that case, what will happen is you are just doubling the amount of storage that you're going to utilize. So just understand where you have duplicated, how much you have duplicated, and understand your access pattern. So if I have to like kind of highlight something on your access patterns, it's purely on the fact that how much or when is your storage or where these storage objects or your content on these storage objects are accessed, whether they are accessed by APIs, whether they are accessed directly as a file share, whether they are accessed within your applications on and so on. So based on these access patterns, now you would also understand what are the networking implications for that, because storage and networking go hand in hand. They will actually uh, you know come handy when you talk of how you want to kind of save the cost on this, because a huge storage lying in a cold line, and if you're trying to access from there every say month or every day, every week, the networking implications for that are also going to be high. Although you would get your backups frequently from that place, but it's not the right way to utilize that. Maybe if the use case for that has to be thoroughly thought through. So that is why you should understand the premise of which storage to use under what circumstances, which would help you then identify the cost implications for that storage practice as well. With that, let's kind of move into the next section of the topics, which is where we understand the optimization. So although like I mentioned that optimizations will help you cut down your cost, but that cost you can kind of divert or utilize in a better way. You spend those amount in a better way to kind of achieve a higher level of operational efficiency, and that is where we kind of move into this topic. Now here I would rather tell you certain factors which is kind of a difference between a cost and value. Now, I'm sure you'll all understand the value that you derive when it comes to saving costs. But then how do you do that? What are those factors? Now, predominantly like three broad or four broad. So the fourth one is actually the infrastructure components, but predominantly it's these three aspects, which is around the cost visibility, the resource optimization, and the pricing efficiency. Now, when it comes to the cost visibility, you should be knowing, as I mentioned in the first section, that you should be knowing in detail that which products, which SKUs are your highest consumers. You need to know like what is the amount that you want to set aside for these services so that you achieve a level of your business outcomes. Now, now again, like these kind of visibility of cost is definitely a shared responsibility across the board, across the team. So that is where I mentioned that you should be having a level of review, you should have a level of analysis, visualize the impact from these kind of actions. So say for example, maybe you can do a sort of an A/B testing where you kind of cut down on certain instances, understand what is the impact for your business in those cases, and then try to understand the operational aspects of it, to understand the chargeback models of which service you are selling and how you are selling it. So these cost controls, and definitely like I can surely talk about a lot of budgeting alerts and so on that you can set to give you a broader sense of visibility. And even at a granular level, a project, if you set it like dev projects, it should not exceed $100 a month, and you get an alert at every 50%, 80%, 90%, you get a good amount of visibility. But then, are you then just going to bump the budgets for that, or are you actually going to cut them down? It's the action that would matter. The second aspect, wherein I highlight more from the resource optimization perspective, is the fact that I would again emphasize this is reducing your wastage on your resources. So that is one way to kind of achieve any sort of cost and operational efficiency. Now, your goal as a business, as a service provider, as a product owner, is you should have the best kind of a product which serves your customers and which gives a specific performance. Now, what you are going to do in terms of resource optimization is identify idle resources or services that are better, applications that can run in a optimized manner, which can run on a cost efficient VM, on a low CPU VM, on a low RAM VM. You should be thinking from an architecture landscape from that perspective, that which are the resources which I can optimize. There can be instances where, okay, you are just hosting some sort of a microservices environment. You don't need, something as complex as a Python and Django. What if you want to do it by Flask, which is a bit lightweight? Just think from these aspects, and I'm sure your resource optimization gets taken care of in a much efficient manner. And I was mentioning earlier, there are a lot of instances where over provisioning, under provisioning do happen. And one beautiful feature of GCP, which I often recommend, is the recommendation piece that is shown against your services. Uh, a lot of folks ignore that, and you would see that there is a recommendation that gets shown that, okay, you can save X dollars per month if you kind of scale up, scale down in whatever cases it is. And if you kind of action that, you definitely would see some cost benefit over there. So one thing is that you should also enable your teams, your dev teams, to kind of identify and think from these perspectives as well. So that is where you would achieve an overall efficiency. If I talk from a pricing efficiency perspective, now this can include different ways or different capabilities from a platform perspective. You would have like sustained usage discounts, whether you should be using a flat rate or an on demand pricing. whether you need some volume discounting. These are certain factors that you should work out with your cloud service provider, and I'm sure you would actually gain a lot of efficiency in your billing cycles as well. So, but yes, this is something that you should also think from a migration perspective, or even pre-cloud migration, I would say. And you can kind of think from an efficiency perspective from a billing lifecycle also. And as I highlighted that any of these, the basis for them would always be the compute, storage, and networking aspects, because they form the backbone of your any cloud infrastructure that you can think through. So that is where your resource optimization, pricing efficiency for each service that you can think of, it actually matters in those directions. So optimizations around compute and storage would definitely lead to some optimizations on networking as well, and you can gain a level of efficiency. Now, I had been talking more from the compute and the storage aspects side of things. So what about the networking, and how do you actually gain efficiency over that? So in this case, one thing is surely something to be kind of thought about and understood from an application lifecycle perspective, is your network is basically your bloodline or your lifeline of your product or your application. So one important aspect is the network is actually talking. You should listen to your applications. When I say listen, it means that understand your network logs in a very important manner. You can see a lot of activity happening, and it might be possible that these are very redundant activities that are happening across your application, and that would actually amount to certain cost, which is where you should understand and listen to your applications. Second, and an important one, is that using of VPN. Now, it might not really be an ideal case for everyone to go for and use VPNs, and which again is kind of going to be a cost, a high cost layer, because VPN is something where you want only a closed group of people to kind of work on certain applications, on certain layers. If, of course, it's a business mandate, well and good, you can use that, but then there are certain costs associated to that. It does not just add a security layer, it also adds to the cost layers as well. Now, in terms of networking, one important misconception, I would say, not exactly a misconception, but not a well thought of layer, is distinguishing between standard tiers and premium tiers. The cost for that do differ, and just because we have maybe ample credits, or just because we want to serve global customers, we go for like premium tiers, which might not really be the case all the time. You need to understand that when and why you should be using such network tiers, under what circumstances. So understand your use case. What is the distinguishing factor between standard tiers and premium tiers? Whether you want a US based IP address or a regional is fine for you. Whether you want a multi-region storage or a local storage is fine for you. This actually distinguishes between usage of your standard versus the premium tiers. And definitely, so as I was mentioning, any network layer, okay, the basis for that again would be to listening to your application. So I'm just reiterating that for the fact that how do you actually listen to your application? You need to understand the logs. There are VPC logs that you get your ingress and egress logs for the same, whether it is at a regional layer, whether it is at a project layer, and you get all these factors readily available. So you need to understand which service is consuming a higher network versus which one can you can reduce the traffic for, and thus reducing the cost as well. For example, let me give you an example that we kind of faced at our organization. uh, we were serving our entire content platform, okay, directly from some buckets or from a storage layer or from a disk on the VM. Now that was causing too much of a network hog and a network bandwidth, and it was also not giving us the right latency for our content consumers, which is where we came across I mean, this was quite a long back, so CDN was also new, which is where we kind of came across cloud CDN with GCP. And that not just lowered our storage cost, but also lowered our networking cost. So these insights you should only get once you kind of start analyzing and listening to your applications. Yes, it might call for a bit of re-architecting or rewiring your applications, but trust me, that's worth the effort. The effort that you spent in re-architecting, you would definitely get a longer return and a longer savings in your cost as well. So those are certain factors that you should keep in mind, specifically when you talk of like networking considerations. Now let's move on to a section around analytics. Now a lot of, so I have been like, I am giving you a lot of anecdotes and examples from practical situations and practical experiences based on what I have talked to different startups, or my own internal layers, or the partner network which I kind of talk to. So a lot of people, would be facing a very similar line of issues, and I'm sharing this from the fact that the industry would require, similar solutions for the same. But yeah, there can be situations where some solution might differ from case to case or from, application to application, which can be handled at a case to case layer. So let's talk a bit from a analytics perspective. Now, specifically when you talk of like analytics, and if I had to like highlight one product or one service from GCP, that's BigQuery. It's a massive data warehouse. You call it a data warehouse, a data lake. There are different terminologies to that. I mean, doesn't matter. But yes, it is one service which, if you don't handle correctly, you are going to have massive costs as such. And that is purely because of the fact that if you don't control which query and how your jobs are configured, which query is giving or fetching how much of data, you're definitely going to run into issues. Trust me, I personally faced a huge bill of almost to the tune of like, say 50, 60 lakhs on BigQuery, which of course got solved with the help of some, the support executives from Google. But yes, it was a misfiring from BigQuery from our side, which actually, led to some accidental errors. So specifically, if I talk of BigQuery, you need to understand two aspects to this. BigQuery not just processes a huge chunk of data, there is also a storage aspect involved over there. So it's an on-demand processing that you do, as well as there is an active storage that actually takes care of storing all the partitions, the tables, and the data along with it. So you should be cognizant of the fact that there is a processing aspect and there is a storage aspect. Now, the next aspect over here is that whether you want to go for a flat rate kind of a pricing or an on-demand pricing. Now, let's understand this a bit more in depth. So, uh, at a higher level, flat rate is when you get a fixed rate for any kind of query or any capacity that you run BigQuery for, and it will be proportionally the same rate. On demand is when, by default, BigQuery gives you an on demand pricing. Okay. And in this case, what happens is, if say for example you are a very high volume customer, you may find it more cost effective to switch from on demand to a flat rate, because you know that every month on month you are going to process at least 2 terabytes, at least 5 terabytes of data. Okay, and in that case a flat rate would be a more efficient mechanism. So in what circumstances you should go for an on demand, wherein you don't know the pricing patterns, or wherein you don't know your querying patterns. So say for example month one you are only querying say 50 GB of data. Month two you might want to do a 5 terabyte of data. Month three again you want to do only 50 GB or 1 GB, 10 GB, something like that. If your data is varying, okay, in terms of processing, okay, you can go for an on demand pricing, because in that case you would have like an overall, if you see a year on year pricing, you would definitely be at a lower rate in terms of your overall bill. Also, when it comes to flat rate pricing, there might be certain conditions and terms applied over there, wherein you need to have a minimum of this much of billing to happen, then only you get a flat rate pricing. So I mean, let's not get into the billing models for that, but yeah, that's how basically flat rate versus on demand work. Now, you know, in this case, you might be kind of worried, or that okay, in cases of like flat rate, I might not be always utilizing that as a startup. Yes, you might not be always utilizing that, but if you see a pattern, again, as I would just go back to my slides and say that auditing is the key, not just for your infrastructure, but also for your analytics services as well. And that is where you kind of understand your bills, your patterns, and how you are going to utilize that. So that itself, that auditing process would actually do a lot of cost optimizations for you. And one way to do that is specifically if you talk of the Google Cloud Console. Okay, you would get a lot of visualizations related specifically for BigQuery, because that's one service which I think GCP also understands that it might lead to a lot of costs, and people can actually save a lot on that as well. So some of the optimizations that you can think of, okay, specifically when it comes to BigQuery or any analytics service processing, whether it is BQ on GCP or any other cloud provider. One is the fact that you need to only query what you need. Again, let's be Indians, like as our traditional way, consume only what you need, pay only what you need for. Same way, query only what you need to. And we really mean it. I mean, when we talk of that, right? BigQuery, you, if you don't want that data, why are you even querying that? Okay, you might get this insight from anyone, that if you actually query the data that only you need for, okay, you can actually save a lot of costs. And BigQuery has features wherein you can understand how much of data is being queried. Write your query in the most efficient manner. Don't have a select star. Instead, you can do something like a select, and only the columns that you require. Have appropriate joins, have appropriate partitions, and you can actually do a lot of query optimizations over there. The next is definitely set up controls, okay, for any kind of accidental human errors. Now, as I was giving you an example, right, wherein we shot up a bill on BQ for almost like 50, 60 lakhs, which thankfully got resolved amicably. But yes, it can happen to anyone. And if you kind of put that in the right perspective, it's not just it's more of a human error. But then if I had set some limits on my queries, if I had some optimized manner in which BQ can charge me, okay, I would have avoided this kind of accidental billings. Now in this case, what would happen is, yes, you can apply limits into BigQuery, and that will allow you to only run the queries for a few dollars or a few cost, and then you can actually save some cost over there. One important aspect, I mean, this is pretty much talked about, and people do use that proactively, is using caching for BigQuery. So I think like BigQuery caches all their results for at least 24 hours. So and caching, if you apply it, you are definitely not going to iterate over and over again, and that applies specifically when you want to use something of a dashboard that you are sharing with your external users, like a data studio dashboard or something, where every time someone opens the data studio, BigQuery should not be querying it again. It can pick the results from the cache. So it's more of an intelligent approach to kind of save some cost, but yes, it also gives you a better efficiency. Caching as a on web applications would definitely give you a higher level of comfort and stability as such. And again, the more you partition and cluster your tables, it is where you can help reduce the cost of processing queries. So I would say like the fourth point and the first point are actually correlated. You can query better if you have better partitions. If you partition, you will be able to query better, and so on. So that is one way of kind of managing the cost around BigQuery. And specifically when I talk of like data engineering as such, there are umpteen number of possibilities. These are just a few to start for, and that is where you can kind of keep on learning and growing over the journey in terms of the cost optimizations that you can think of. So with that, I would actually end the session here, and I would rather open the floor in terms of any questions or any kind of discussions that folks want to have, and I would be happy to answer that. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Hey, thank you, Damesh. It was very, very insightful as well. Some of the
sure,
learnings, because the kind of anecdotes, also the examples you used from your experience, also interacting with some startups, because some of the mistakes are also costly mistakes, right?
correct.
This workshop also, the session also throw the limelight to the startups as well. So what I'll do is, now I'll open up the floor for questions.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, Hello, participants. If you have any questions, please raise your hand so that we can unmute from your end, uh, from our end, so that you can raise the question. You can also alternatively post your question on the chat window as well.
Yeah.
See, one common thing why in between Damesh, what I could see, right,
Mm-hmm.
especially we as an incubator or accelerator, we end up
Yeah.
also giving free credits to the
Correct.
startups. So
Correct.
one thing, how the startup founders are utilizing the credits
Mm-hmm.
wisely, and
Mm-hmm.
also avoid over provisioning as well, the cost
Correct.
versus value. So that
Correct.
is where I could see mostly, the mistake has been made as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
So I believe, I'm pretty sure startups, founders who are listening to the conversation, right? So maybe while they are provisioning, ensure, they're not over provisioning and ambitious. That's the best takeaway, what I would also see. And
Correct.
then one thing, what you also, for me, it's very insightful in terms of learning, read the spikes as well,
Hmm.
right? We
Yeah.
sometimes get carried away as well with the notification when free credits are on, but it's
Correct.
also important to do some auditing then and there, so that
Right.
you can also control the cost.
Correct.
So I'm just okay. So I think it's a question. Rahul also. It's a question from Rahul Dharmesh. He
Mm-hmm.
feels it's unrelated as well, but anyway,
Yeah.
he wants to ask, saying, "Is
Mm-hmm.
it possible to pay my invoices via NEF method for Google Cloud?"
Okay.
I believe it's not also possible, but I would like to share your views on that as well.
Yeah, certainly, Yogi and Rahul, the person who has asked this question, definitely it's not currently possible. But yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I really do not have too much insights into the vision and how the billing modes would turn up in the future. And right now, as of now, NEFT is definitely not supported. And I also understand that there are certain Indian debit cards also which might not be supported. So it's purely how the payment processing works at Google and with the Indian payment ecosystem. They would definitely add more and more payment mechanisms, and so definitely not as of now, but yeah, just wait for the future. Who knows, like if it can certainly be a possibility soon.
You never know, right? Even
Yeah,
Google Pay can be integrated to Google Cloud as well at some point.
exactly. I mean, I always like the example of Google Pay.
Uh-huh.
How I mean that product
Seamless.
as UPI. Okay, UPI is a framework by Indian banking authorities, and Google had to like kind of shape their product in alignment with that. So, and right now, since like none of the card providers, they don't do any kind of automated or recurring billing, that has been disabled from, I think, from April. Okay. Likewise, people are facing challenges with their card payments as well. So you never know, like there can be certain forms or mandates that can come across, like the NASH mandates that you kind of provide, and NEFT can also turn up like a possibility, just like how UPI shapes up for like Google Pay.
Absolutely. Hey,
Yeah,
thank you for sharing your views on this as
sure.
well.
Sure.
So let me also open up the floor for question. If any more
Yeah.
questions, if no more questions, right, then we should go ahead and wind up the session. Maybe we can allow 30 seconds. If anybody would like to ask question, please let us know. There is a raise hand option where we will enable you to ask the question as well. I think we have Varun. He
Yeah.
has a question.
Sure.
Arun, you can unmute yourself and you can ask. Over to you.
Yes, thanks, Yogi, and thank you very much for the Ramesh for the insightful session.
Sure. Thanks.
My question is just quite a simple one because we haven't yet developed our app completely, so we are not aware of these much of whatever the trends happens once
Mhm.
we send this to the cloud. So, do we have any experts outside? Like there are any some other companies who can once we're done with the application, so that
Mhm.
they can audit our complete. Uh, a complete thing, the complete service as well as the
Mhm.
product what we are giving, and they can give us the optimizations what we have to make. So,
Okay.
is this kind of services available?
So yes, a lot of cloud partners. There is a very strong partner ecosystem, I would say, for almost like all the clouds. Okay, and these partners actually help you not just transition into cloud, but also optimize your journey into cloud. So there are, I would say, a lot of partners available, and you can directly kind of reach out to any of the partners. And with your permission, Yogi, I mean, I can also like kind of pitch in our startup as well. I mean, we
Yeah,
are a
please.
GCP
Yeah.
partner. Like, yeah, so Agraya Technologies is also a GCP partner, which helps you in your migration and assessment journey as well. So yeah, more than happy if you'll want to kind of reach out, do an entire audit of how your journey is going to be, what will be the potential cost that come year on year or month on month, and we kind of provide those services as well.
Okay, perfect. That's great.
Yeah.
That's thanks so much.
Okay. Sure. Thanks.
See, even we at T-Hub also looking for these kind of service providers where we can
Yeah.
also add value to the startups as well, because
Correct.
it also for them it also not only help them to accelerate the product to the market,
Yes.
but also in terms of the savings and optimization as well.
Of course. Of course.
So,
Right.
with that note, thank you so much, Dharmesh. The session was very insightful, and I'm pretty sure the participants also had enjoyed the session as well. And thank you for taking time to spend, your time with us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks again, Yogi, and the entire team at T-Hub. It was really a pleasure. And feel free to connect on any of my handles that are listed out here. I would be more than happy to keep the engagement going. Thank you again.
Most welcome. So, if there are any questions, comes offline, right?
Yeah.
We're also happy to share that with you
Feel
as well.
free. Yeah, definitely. Okay.
Hey, thanks everyone. Thanks
Thanks
for joining.
again.
Hope you also had a great time. So stay safe and look forward to another session as well with Google for Startups. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks. Have a nice evening. Bye.